Hi there. My name is Jessica Crow, and I am the founder of Apogy. Apogy is a change management training and consulting firm, and this is Change Leader Insights. This is our podcast where I get the privilege of interviewing experts, academics, change leaders of all different backgrounds and experiences. And today I have with me Douglas Flory, who is a member of the board of directors. He's the treasurer for the Association of Change Management Professionals, which I also am a part of, the Colorado chapter, but have became familiar with Douglas through the work that he's doing with ACMP, the content that he's sharing, the information that he puts into social media. I follow it, I resonate with it. So I really wanted to have a chance to talk with him. He's also a change management consultant. So if you're in the market for a consultant, Douglas does do that as well. But thank you so much for being here today. I'm really excited to talk with you about change management, change readiness, and also the topic of resilience and maybe the link between the two. So thanks for being here.
It's my privilege. I'm humbled to be here with you. And, I could talk change management all day with you. So thank you.
Yeah.
I look forward to it.
Me too. Maybe a little background then for people who are tuning in. How did you get into change management in the first place?
I love that question because I use that same question sometimes too. And so here's my story. Okay. It's a very distinct memory that I have. I recall it pretty clearly. I was in fourth grade and the teacher had career day.
Oh,
and
cool.
She's going around the class and I'm looking at my friends and they're like, yeah, baseball player, nurse, doctor, teacher, all these things. And then finally my turn came and I said, global organizational change management leader.
Yeah, right.
And the entire class just stopped and said, like, who's that kid?
Me too, which is a funny story. No, I'm kidding.
Know. We showed them, didn't we? So I made Miss Applegate really happy that day.
She was impressed, I'm sure.
Yeah. No, like most people these days, I found my way into change management. Which is interesting because literally in today's age, there's a lot of graduates coming out of college and university programs like Northwestern and USC and so many others that are producing some really great future leaders. And they literally are starting in school. But me, I found my way. I graduated. I had this career in mind, and then that didn't happen. So I landed at a financial institution, and they started throwing these different methodologies at me. And I was like, I don't know what this stuff is.
What is this? Yeah.
And so they started off with project management, and then it was like Lean Six Sigma. And then I guess I was doing well, and they kept throwing more at me. And then they were like, hey, here's this change management thing. And I was like, what's that?
Right.
I didn't know what it was. And to be honest, I didn't really appreciate it for what it was at that time, because I was like absorbing so much. And so I kept the materials and I still have them today. That was like 20 some years ago.
Yeah.
But eventually that's how I got into it. And then I started realizing, wow, this is really, as I started doing all these methodologies, I realized it all comes back to people.
Absolutely.
That's where I landed, and that's what I've been doing. And I'm fortunate and blessed to be able to do that. And I love it.
Good. I love that story because I resonate with that story. I was trained and certified in change management, not knowing, I joined an organization. They're like, you're going to do change management. You're going to be part of the founding team of this change management organization. I was like, great. What is this? And so when, like most people who likely go through the process of learning about change management, it's a lot of stuff you're already doing, but the training sort of brings it together in a way to help you think about it in a more strategic way. And I liked that a lot about it. And I still have my, my resources that I acquired back then, but in every role. So I didn't stay in change management. I went from one role to another. There's this really cool, leadership development program at the organization I was at. In every single role, however, I used my change management skills. So that's kind of, why I'm still doing change management, because to your point, it's all about the people. You could have this amazing solution, this amazing idea, but unless people align with it, buy into it, want to change, they're not going to.
Yeah.
So it's a really neat way of thinking about solving business problems by working with and through people. Yeah. So, so for people who are, again, tuning in, we talk about change, readiness, and resilience in some of the forums that we have access to through ACMP. So plug for ACMP as well. And it's really great conversation. And it gets me thinking about how we do what we do differently. And when it comes to the topic of resilience, I've presented that a few times, and I've gotten some interesting feedback from other change management professionals and counterparts where the idea is, well, there's so much of, human behavior and what's happening in a person's life that trying to be responsible for supporting or encouraging or developing resilience isn't really what we do. It's not in scope. We think, it's more of a, we align with the project and we make sure people are ready. And then, we do all the things we need to do, but resilience isn't really, something we do. And then on the other hand, people are like, well, today, well-being is a topic in organizations, and it does matter how people feel and their overall mental health, physical health, the structure, the environment. So what is your take on when it comes to being a change management leader or a change leader in the organization? How do you think about enabling getting your team ready and this concept of also resilience, and is there a bridge between the two?
Yeah, I do see the value in that, but I think it's two different things in my mind, at least how I approach it. So I think it's well-being and resilience. And there's a correlation, but I think they're distinct and separate. So well-being to me is like mental health, physical health, making sure you're able to have balance and a sense of purpose, and you're doing something that's meaningful, right? Resilience to me, though, is something that, like, it's almost like character. Like, how do you teach character, or how do you teach resilience? I remember somebody asking me that question one time, how do you teach character? And I said, back at the time, I was like, I don't think you can. I think you just teach concepts and principles, and you either agree to them and apply them in your life, and therefore you stick to them and you go through trials, events, experiences, and that shapes and molds your character. And I think the same is kind of true with resilience, because I hear a lot about this as well. And often what I hear or see is change fatigue. But I'm just going to come out and say, I don't like that word. I think it's more about change resilience.
Yes.
Because if you think about, like, this time of the year, a lot of people are going to the gym, and because they're renewing their focus on what their life and what they want to do.
Right.
You go to the gym and it's been a while, you start exercising and your muscles are weak. They're tired, they're sore after that first workout. So that could be fatigue, sure. But after you keep going to the gym, you start getting stronger, faster, quicker. Your heart rate and everything is doing really well. And all of a sudden you've gotten stronger, and you're able to endure and be more resilient because of it. And I think what we're all trying to do is, I think inherently, biologically, we are not programmed or conditioned for change. We either fight or flight. But the good news is that we can get strong at change if we exercise our muscle. And I think that's what a lot of people are going through right now. So it feels like fatigue. And I think fatigue is real. It can be very real. But I propose that you're building your strength. And if you continue to go through those experiences, you will get stronger and stronger. So really, that's how I delineate the resiliency of it.
And that's a great way of explaining it too. So how would you then, for someone who, you mentioned about building character, it's principles and concepts, and you consistently align with them. And then over time, that character develops because you do or you don't. Same with going to the gym. You might feel that fatigue, but then over time, you'll have stronger muscles, and that's that resiliency. in the business world, in an organization, what are some potential like strategies or ways of thinking that could help an individual develop resilience to the continual change, the pivots in the organization, the new solution that's being implemented, the new person on their team? What would you do, or what would you recommend?
Well, typically what I like to start off with in this area is introduce growth mindset and focus on the mind.
Mm-hmm.
So many times our mind can really influence the way we perceive things, the way we think about things, and therefore, as we do like professional athletes, they do imagery, right, in their mind, and they think about a specific play, and they close their eyes and they're imagining the entire scene, and then they go out and they do it, and it's normal, it's natural for them,
Right.
and they excel at such high levels, with professionals and Olympics and all that stuff.
Yeah, Michael Phelps was big into visualization.
Yeah, exactly. And LeBron James and Michael
Yep.
Jordan, they use it. So many of them use it. So I think that's one thing to focus on is, what is your mindset? Is it a growth mindset where you can learn, you can continue to grow? This is an opportunity. This is not a challenge. This is not something to be fearful of. This is something that's happening to you. It's something that's happening for you. How do you respond to that change? Number one. And then if you can understand that, I think that can take you much further. I think the second thing you could do is kind of help everybody understand what is it you can control and what can you not control. What's in your circles that you can influence and not influence. We can't influence something like a global pandemic,
Right.
or we can't influence those big things that are out of our control. Those kind of happen, and those are anomalies that I don't really feel like is in our scope for this conversation.
Right.
But there are things we can control, like when we go to work, how do we engage with our colleagues, or how do we feel empowered or engaged? How do we respond to that change? And think about historically, when you've had change at work, how did that go? What influenced you? Was it a good experience? Was it a bad experience? Did change management become a bad word?
Right.
Hopefully not. But setting the stage with those kinds of things, I think really helps. And then lastly, I think, well, I don't know if it's lastly, but the third thing that comes to my mind is that as change leaders and even as leadership, we should be looking at what is it that we're creating and asking everybody to focus on for the year, whether it's KPIs or certain performance indicators or goals, or just part of whatever your daily job is. And then how are we coordinating and organizing that in a way that it's not overwhelming? Here comes 300 things at once. Wow, that's not going to help anybody. That's going to burn them out, and that's not going to work. You're not going to get the result. But if you strategically lay that out, like a comms plan or some kind of roadmap or something, do it in ways that maybe you take those 100 items or whatever and you group them together because they kind of have common ground. Or here's another group that has common ground, and lay them out over a period of time. Doesn't have to be a week, a month, a year. It could be a couple of years. But if you can do that, then you're influencing the cadence, the pace, and the capability and capacity of what people can deal with.
Yeah.
So you get best results.
And you made a really good distinction between, and I'll say this as change management leader, change leader, and then leader. And it's all sort of one and the same, yet there is the distinction in organizations that have a dedicated change management professional. However, really where the change gets diffused and is through that leader of the people, of the teams. And so, the things that you were describing, that if I'm an individual on a team, how do I develop that growth mindset? How do I prepare myself and ready myself for continual change? If I'm a leader of a team, what kinds of conversations can I be having with my team to nurture and coach and create that type of change ready environment? And then you have the change management professional who now is in that more consulting internal or, external role. How do I shape and guide the conversations that the team leaders are having that, with their teams? And so it's all connected in many ways.
It really is. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what kind of conversation would you have with the C-suite? Where, I think that's a tricky one for many, because it's like, well, we already do change management. We've got leaders of teams, or we've got, our processes, we've got communications team and emails, and, like, well, I think the pacing and prioritization part is an anchor for me, at least, in having conversations with the C-suite. But I'd love to hear how do you bring the reality of, how do you make change management important when you're talking to an executive leader who is focused on many different things, but financial performance is also a key driver of their,
their world.
They're thinking about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I like to, some of the tricks I like to use are storytelling, analogies, metaphors, things like that. And I remember a time when I came to a C-suite and they were completely new to change management, but they thought, we got this. It's just it's in an email and you just create the materials, yada, yada. And we tried that and it didn't work. So I came back to them and I said, I gave them the parallel and I said, have you ever been to a concert? And they were all, oh yeah, I just went to one. And this one person who was really into music, I asked them, what was the last concert you went to? And they told me the name of the band, and it was like some 70s band, I don't remember. But anyway, the point was, I said, how was that experience for you? What was it like when they played your favorite song? And what were your memories of that concert? And they were like, oh, it was the best thing ever. Everybody was just hitting the right notes. They were singing, they were in harmony. It was just like I remembered the song, and they were awesome. And it was great. I bought a shirt and I still listen to it this day. All those kinds of things. I was like, yeah, that's great. And everybody else was like, yeah, I've had that kind of thing too with the band I like or whatever. I was like, well, what would it be like if you went to that concert and the drummer's like, completely off rhythm, doesn't remember when to hit the cymbal or whatever. And the rock singer's completely off tune. And the guitarist is like, playing bass instead of the acoustic guitar. And the piano guy is hitting the wrong keys. What would that experience be like? And they were like, oh, that would sound like, garbage. Yeah. I would want my money back. I'd want a refund. What is this even the same band I know, or a cover band?
Right.
And I was like, exactly. And because of those individuals trying to perform on all these different things, they're not collectively orchestrated. And if you orchestrate your efforts around that, you can create something amazing that people love. They remember. It creates an amazing experience for them that's positive. And that's what we're trying to do. And all of a sudden, light bulbs started going off, because instead of throwing change management stuff at them, I went human and said, here's something we all relate to. What would that be like?
Yeah.
And then
that's a great way.
I got past that point, I just provided some data points from like their surveys, from some performance indicators, historical factors, things like that. And they were like, we have been doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I mean, that's a really, as you were describing it in my head, I was visualizing all the things. So that's a really nice way of explaining the value of utilizing change management as, in an organization, and having that care and focus. So that's cool.
And secretly, if you think about it a little bit further, if you get into the nerdery of it, music has timing, it has cadence, it has rhythm, and that's what we're trying to establish in your culture, because that's very much a part of your culture, is the rhythm, the cadence, the flow, the way you do things. those are all part of your culture. And if you can embed this into your culture so it becomes routine, you're going to see dividends on the results when you make these tweaks and changes to your performance.
And do you think that, what you've just described too can contribute to the resilience of an organization as a result of making those tweaks and modifications so everyone's singing and playing in harmony?
I do. And the reason why is because if we think about neuroscience, our brains, what do they want to do? They don't want to continuously be active and be trying to solve math problems or whatever. They want to be in efficiency mode. They want to be automatic and routine and ritual and those kinds of things. So if you can find those rituals and routines and establish them as part of your culture, so that this meeting happens on this day every week or every month or whatever, and we know that this report's going to come out on this second week of every month, or this is going to happen then, and then you can start to forecast things almost. And when you can forecast things and they become more predictable,
that's the word I was thinking of. Yeah,
a habit, a ritual, it's ingrained, and everybody just knows this is how we operate. Then you're seeing that resilience. And when something comes up, they can then show their agility and ability to navigate better than when there's not so much structure or routine.
Yeah, they've got their coping skills are likely better to handle those ups and downs. But would you, when I think about today's workplace, you mentioned that rest, digest, that parasympathetic nervous system being activated, right? If we're thinking about the behavior, the neuroscience of change, before the pandemic, stress was the global epidemic. And so most people are operating at a frequency that is constantly looking for those threats, and change in that environment, any shift, even small ones, it's like, is that a threat? Is that a threat? Is that a threat? So that executive functioning, that capacity to cope is diminished because of the environment, because of, not having that ability to prioritize, to pace, to think about, to group, changes together. So it is so important to be able to do that. But many organizations are swirling. It's an uphill battle. Yeah. Like they're already okay, you've got people who are really high performing, but their default is stress. so in that type of environment, it really does take a collective effort and a shared understanding about the value of why kind of bringing things down a notch could be make the organization even more effective in what it does on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. And I think it's very true. Everybody for the last 3 years has gone through a lot, companies and organizations included. And I think a lot of people are maybe beginning to feel more comfortable, perhaps, as a result of things becoming a little bit more, I don't want to say the way they were or normal, but not so hyper sensitive or inactive as a result of what we were going through. And as they're coming out of that, I think, now they're dealing with a lot to figure out, even children, especially with everything that had to go through as well. But I think when so many times we hear the words like, oh, we want to go back to the way things were. And I don't think really often I think what we translate that into, and I don't know, tell me what your thoughts are on this, but I think a lot it translates, or somehow all the sudden jumps into the conversation of RTO, hybrid, and remote. And I don't think that's really what they're seeking. I think what they're seeking is some kind of routine, some kind of habit, some kind of normalcy, so that they can feel that sense of comfort, because their brain has been so active all the time that they're just so desensitized almost to what they've been going through. But I think the whole remote RTO thing, hybrid, that's another thing that they have to consider. But I think truly what they're looking for is that cadence, that rhythm, the orchestration of things.
That makes a lot of sense to me, actually. And I agree with what you're saying. it does seem like it's not necessarily where people are working and how. It is more about having that stability and consistency and knowing what to expect, that predictability that you mentioned, so they can really focus on doing the work versus trying to identify the threats, right? And manage all of that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and when we get back into normalcy, our
Yeah.
brain is going to continue to go back into that, that automatic mode of efficiency. It's going to continue to scan for threats. It always has, always will,
That's
always
how we're
does.
designed. Yeah.
That's how we're designed. So, that's kind of why it's fight or flight. It's scanning continuously in the environment to say, is this a threat? Or is this person a threat? Or is that thing a threat? And we don't traditionally stop and think about it because it's just automatic and routine.
Yeah.
We don't sit there and go, hold on, is that computer a threat? Is that is this a threat? It just happens when we're in an environment.
Right. And we're inundated with that. Even if we don't even realize it, the content that we consume outside the workplace, there's always that potential for threats unless we're self-aware to recognize, okay, our own level of resiliency and what we might need to restore that. And then in the workplace, as leaders, how can we create more stability and consistency so our teams can perform to their fullest potential versus constantly scanning, constantly, operating at a higher, higher threat level, I guess. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but that way they can handle the big changes or the small changes that come their way as a part of day-to-day, working life and also home life.
And as you think about that, sorry, this just entered my mind, but it's almost parallel to how people go through change. We think, whether or not you like the change curve and Kubler-Ross concept, right? I'm not here to debate that. But the concept is that people go through change at different rates of speed. So you, Jessica, might be more advanced further down the road than I am in the change, whereas I might be a little bit more latent and behind because I'm just now getting the information, or things at home are a little bit different, or whatever it is causing me to be a little bit slower, but I'm still moving through that process. Right. I think that's kind of an interesting parallel as to how that resilience and fatigue can happen. You may be really strong, high performer because your resilience and everything, like you said. My performance, my resiliency may be still recovering and rebuilding and getting back to where I was. But I'm not quite there yet.
And that's where that well-being for me, there is a connection between well-being and resilience. I do think it is two distinct things. The way that you explained it earlier was spot on. And yet, you mentioned there's somebody who's got things going on outside the workplace that's affecting their resiliency in the organization. And that's why having that awareness that is a reality of our employees, they're, as much as we'd like to think we keep it separate, it's, it's all one and the same. It all affects.
You're the same person, whether you walk in this door or that door.
Yeah.
And you're gonna have emotions, whether you're at home or at the restaurant or at school or at work or wherever. You're a human. So you can't separate it.
You can't. And that's what makes, change management and implementing change in an organization so not complicated, but the thoughtfulness. I mean, you have to balance too the demands of the business and there are reasons that there are goals and milestones and deadlines in place, because that's how you will progress and go towards something that can be, an amazing experience if handled well. How do you, I guess when you're thinking about balancing individual here who's resilient and able to adapt and flex, and then this person who isn't quite as resilient because of a lot of different factors, how do you balance that? Like, how do you think about timing and kind of accommodations would you recommend organizations make? Or is it about, like, what would you do? What kind of guidance would you give?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, I think middle managers have a very hard job.
They do.
But
Yeah.
they also are the epicenter of your success. Whether it's trying to lead a team to achieve a goal or an individual goal,
Mm-hmm.
or help the organization and contribute to that line of sight of CEO has said, let's achieve this. So how does my role do that?
Mm-hmm.
Or understanding them as people and humans, like connecting, having that trust in a relationship with them, that they can understand, he's going through a divorce at home, so he's probably having a hard time, or she's going through, just had triplets, or whatever the different scenarios are at home, like you said, those could be really influencing people. And I think in a lot of ways you see that in working moms these days. They're having a real challenge with a sense of guilt or direction or purpose of, should I be doing this, or should I be over here at home and helping? And I hope that doesn't come across as sexist or anything like that.
No, there's a lot of conversation on LinkedIn right now about this very topic, but for men too, with children at home. So I think not at all. It resonates.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I didn't want to burn down your house. But I know it's a reality, because the people I talk to, and whether they're male or female or whatever their situation is, it's a reality for them. But so I think there's that factor right there. Number one is having some kind of trust and relationship with those people, so you can know where they are, and then you can help guide them and set expectations that are appropriate to meet them where they are.
Yeah.
And then when you look at it as a bigger structure, a bigger picture, like a program manager, a change manager, or a leader, something like that, I think it comes down to like almost stakeholder identification and engagement is kind of what's in my head. And so I think about, let's say, you could take it down to a macro level or a micro level. So a macro level may be a business unit, an entire group. It may be a team, or maybe at the micro level, it's an individual or a very small unit or something like that. And understand, like, hey, here's our change. Here's our journey, stages A to Z. There is this team on that journey, and kind of plot them on the journey.
Yeah.
Then you can begin to see, where are they? And then over time, strategically, how can you help those who may be having a challenge or latency, or understand what they're going through? How can you strategically apply change to help them, but also understand why they are where they are, and watch them progress over time hopefully from low to high, or resistant to adoption, or something like that. And I think if you can do that, I think that will help you move the dial, maybe not as fast as you want, but you'll see the progress and the traction that you're looking for with context.
And the change will stick, versus it being something that they revert back to their former behaviors.
Habits.
As you were describing that, it was like lovingly holding them accountable, which, another way to put it might be having compassion for the human experience. And it kind of circles back to our earlier, point. How do you teach compassion? Well, you either have it or you don't, but it's something you can develop by being more mindful and aware, and maybe having more compassion for yourself. And then you can hold others accountable in the way that you described, which is, you're doing the things from the macro to the micro level, but keeping that human experience, that person, the people, front and center the entire time.
Yeah. And I think when you do have that compassion, as you described there, I think you either have empathy, or you have sympathy, or you have apathy.
Right. Oh, that's
what your experience is. Like, I watch, as I mentioned before, I have children of all ages.
Yeah.
And when I first got them a puppy, some of the kids were like, "Oh, a puppy, this is the greatest thing ever," and they were totally connected to the dog. Other people were like, "I'm scared of the dog. What is this thing?" The younger children, and so
Yeah.
they were kind of apathetic toward it, like, "What is that thing? I don't know what to do." And, some of the other kids were just like hugging it and playing with it and feeding it and
Yeah.
taking it for a walk, and you kind of see that. And then over time, I have a colleague who just recently posted about his furry friend who recently passed away.
Hard.
And I
Yeah.
was like, wow, that's really hard because animals have such a connection in our life.
Yeah.
And it's when you have those type of experiences that you can be, you can, hopefully you're not apathetic, but you can at least connect with them and be sympathetic or
Mm-hmm.
empathetic
Mm-hmm.
based upon what your experience is in connection to what they're going through.
Yeah. Yeah. And that empathy in action is that
Mhm.
compassion that
Yes,
kind of
right.
brings it full circle.
Yeah.
Um, Douglas, I have learned so much from this conversation and I really loved talking to you.
Oh,
And I
thank you.
also, another takeaway is how to use storytelling to really paint the picture of what you're saying.
Yeah.
You did such a great job and it really helped reinforce how to think about things for me in a different way by using those stories. So note to self,
Oh,
more storytelling, because that
thank you
was
so
really
much.
effective. Yeah. Is
Oh.
how do people, if they want to get in touch with you,
Mhm.
is LinkedIn the best way to find you? And
Yeah. LinkedIn is
website, I don't know. Yeah.
yeah, LinkedIn is my love language. So
I love LinkedIn.
I'm pretty active on there, and you can go on there and connect with me. I love to be social. Doesn't matter what your tenure and change is, whether you're curious or you've been doing change for 20 years or whatever, or you just want to connect on whatever we have in common.
Ask some
I'd love to do
questions.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I think that's a great way. But I just want to, if I may, I just want to close
Yeah.
on this. I think storytelling is very powerful, but I think the words we use as change leaders are very important. And
Agreed.
we're sitting here trying to convince everybody, our potential customers, our employees, our clients, whatever, that you need us to help you. But
Mm-hmm.
yet we have all this taxonomy and vernacular out there that change is hard, or
Mm.
75% of all efforts fail,
Fail.
or
Yeah.
um, change fatigue, things like those. Think about how you're conveying your message and what that means, not only to your brand, but
Mm-hmm.
the profession, and how it comes across to your employees, your customers, whoever your audience may be. Because when you use those types of words, then Bandura's social change, social learning theory comes into play, and people are like, "Oh yeah, change is hard. Oh, change is hard. I hear that all the time. So change is hard." And it's not that it's hard. I don't think. I think it's that it's not natural for us human as
Yeah.
biologically, but it's complex.
Yeah.
Meaning that there's different components, there's different layers, kind of like Shrek said, I'm like an onion, there's layers to me. And if you can understand those layers, you can make it a better experience, and it's not as hard as
Yeah.
everybody quotes all these different things that are out there.
Yeah. That's a great, we're going to have a follow-up conversation because I agree with you that language and how you frame and frame things does impact people's perception and their
Yeah.
own belief system. The one where though I think it's okay to say is change is hard, because I think about exercise science and like putting
Oh,
in
yeah.
that effort. It is hard. It is, like there is that
Yeah.
part where it's difficult, but through that difficult, you develop that growth, that strength, that resilience. And so it's like, but we'll have to save
We'll
that
have
for
to
a
talk
whole
about
other
that
time.
one another time. I'd love that. But you're right. Exercise is hard. Exercise is hard.
that one you'll give me. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much again for having a conversation with me today. I'm excited to share this with Apogy's community, with my community of friends on LinkedIn and other social media platforms. But yeah, thanks so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks again for sharing your wisdom with me.
Yeah, I sincerely appreciate it. Look forward to continuing to follow your journey. And if there's
Same.
anything I could do to help you or anybody watching, let me know. And this is a great start to my day. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Douglas.
All right, bye.